This is Derrickland. It's a modded theme park me and my friend Martha built during lockdown. It has 7 completely different theme zones: Viking, Medieval, Dystopian, Western, Slime, Dimensions, and one which is just empty because we could never decide what to build there. While I enjoyed building it, I really don't like what the park looks like because I think we can do better. So join us as we build a new, bigger and better theme park in Minecraft. First thing I did was invite Martha into a call to make the plans, but I hypothetically may have forgotten to actually tell her what we were doing.
I don't want to be negative, just, but it's best not to move it for the fact that at one point we couldn't fly over it without it crashing the entire server.
Well, I mean, we're remaking the things, so
Okay.
you don't know what we're doing, do you?
No.
This was going to be more complicated than I had anticipated. The first zone I want to work on is one of my favourites, the Dimension Clash. This zone sees the Ender Dragon and the Wither battling it out as their dimensions spill into the overworld. So, I took the zone and using World Edit I copied it into the new theme park, and yeah, it would appear that World Edit struggles with detecting modded block IDs, which makes a lot of sense actually. After a couple of hours of fixing it, I could finally continue building. The first thing I wanted to work on was this part of the Nether ride, where you go through the portal in the mountain into the Nether. I think the concept's cool, but the entire Nether section is way too short and cramped, so I decided to deepen it. I ended up adding this little Nether fortress, but I think I'm going to end up changing it because I don't really like how it looks. The first third of the ride is underground, and originally it was basically just 2 straight lines which ended up being rather boring to be honest. But this time I thought it would be interesting to go for a more spiral direction to the beginning of the ride, so I made the tunnels curve and twist. I even managed to get this underground loop section in. Placing the tracks, however, actually ended up being a bit more difficult than I anticipated, as I wanted to avoid having the player clip through any sections of the wall. At the end of this section, the track goes up a 90% incline using powered rails. It then goes upwards through the dragon's leg into its stomach and comes out of its mouth, where the next section begins. All that's left now for the ride is to finish the final third. Coming out of the Nether, the ride goes back towards the dragon before doing a loop and spiralling back down underground. I wanted to make this last third of the ride stand out from the first, by making it a bit more chaotic. Sharp turns and spirals make up the majority of it. At some point I'm going to have to go back and smooth out a lot of these turns, but that's a problem for another day. Speaking of things I need to do another day, the only thing left on this specific ride for me to build is the queue and station area, but I want to leave building these until after I finish the other ride, the end raid. With the Nether raid done, it's time to move on to the Dimension Clashes of a major ride, the Ender raid. Honestly, rebuilding this ride was so much easier than the first one, as while I am retracking it for a more thrilling ride experience, for the most part the first 2/3 of the ride are staying the same. You come out of this Nether fortress and weave in and around its towers before ascending the mountain. Actually getting the carts to the top of the mountain was by far the hardest part of the build, as I needed them to just barely make it up so they don't gain too much speed in the next section's plummet. Next the track goes straight down a giant drop, before taking the coaster down the spine of the Ender Dragon. All that's left for me to do now is to build the final section of the ride, the Ender Portal. In the original build, you just drop down, go past the giant egg, then leave the end immediately. But that's a bit boring, so first thing I did was expand this section. I was actually limited in what direction I could go, as part of the Nether ride's underground sections come awfully close to the wall for the end. I decided to build a small end city and boat to really expand what was before a relatively short section. I decided to replace all the walls of black concrete and left little chunks of limestone to give the impression of other end islands off in the distance, but I'm not really too sure how this looks, and I might end up getting rid of it. The Dimension Clash zone does still need some love and attention, but I'm going to save that for a later date, since the only major build left in the area is the restaurant. Instead, I want to build the middle of the park. See, the original Derrickland was a circle with a larger lake in the middle. Well, it was kind of a circle. I admittedly struggled building a full circle, so ended up with this just monstrosity. This time around, I'm just going to use World Edit. So using World Edit, I was able to make a perfect circle outline out of glass, and then made another bigger circle to mark the path for visitors to walk around the lake. I ended up making this little tunnel to connect it to the zone. I do plan to make the end a mixture of netherrack and endstone, but that's something for me to do later when I properly come back to the zone.